In a post-pandemic dystopia where survivors trade their lives for resources, a desperate mother races against time to save her ailing daughter. In the near future, a devastating global pandemic ravaged mankind, animals, and crops, leading to food shortages, chaos, and the fall of society. After getting the disease under control, the New World government known as the Bureau offered survivors resources and protection for a cost in a binding agreement called TheDeal. At her workplace where she paints propaganda posters for a living, Tala receives a notice from her boss regarding her impending processing. Before she leaves, she slips a paint tube into her pocket. Meanwhile, her daughter Analyn fixes a fan that helps cool off people living in the street. Seconds later, the mother arrives to pick her up and they head to the butcher to buy meat. Since the woman took the deal 20 years ago, she's given preferential treatment and doesn't have to line up like the others. The disgruntled customers judgingly stare at Tala, implying that some look down on those who choose to sign the contract. As they leave the establishment, Analyn sees Bureau police officers harass a group of men while asking for their papers. That evening, the daughter refuses to eat the prepared meal as her way of protesting her mother's choice of taking the deal 2 decades ago. Then, Tala tells Analyn that if she runs out of cash, she can sell the paint, explaining why she stole the tube from work. She adds that selling their jewelry must be the last resort, especially a piece that's been in the family for 3 generations. The daughter refuses to listen to the instructions because she still believes they can figure out a way to stop the mother's processing, a procedure that happens at the end of the deal where the person must die. So Tala reminds Analyn that there's nothing they can do because she has a timer implanted at the base of her neck that'll kill her if she doesn't surrender willingly in 5 days. Furious, the daughter sarcastically says she hopes the mother thinks her decision was worth it, then storms out of the apartment. She heads to an underground club to dance away her problems and inhale intoxicating fumes from a substance in a plastic bag. When the electricity goes out, she quickly checks the fuse box and fixes the power. Kabira commends her skills, so she explains that she took 2 years of electrical engineering school. The woman says she never went to school, so she had to work at the morgue, a job she admits isn't glamorous but gives her access to things most people don't have. As Analyn passes by, Kabira tries to check the back of her neck for an implant scar, but there isn't one. The woman asks why she bothered with engineering school if she didn't take the deal, so she says she'll use the knowledge to find a way out of the city. Analyn believes the Railroad, a secret rebel group with access in and out of the city, might recruit her, just like they did her father before she was born. Kabira scoffs and says a magical place where people figured out a way to turn off timers doesn't exist. As the woman leaves, Analyn sees that she knows her boyfriend Jin. Later at the rooftop, the man steadies his girlfriend when she feels dizzy. Then, she mentions that Kabira thinks the railroad's a lie, so he appeases the woman by saying that the city might not be perfect, but at least they're safe from the harsh conditions beyond the wall. He realizes she's feeling sad about her mother's processing, so he promises he'll be by her side after it happens, and they share a kiss. When Analyn returns home, Tala admonishes her for hanging out with troublemakers. The daughter counters that the man she chose wasn't any better than Jin, and the look on her mother's face immediately makes her feel remorseful. Suddenly, she feels a sharp pain in her torso, so the worried Tala says they'll see the doctor tomorrow. The next day, they see expensive vehicles on their way to the Enclave, a section of the city where upper-income residents live. At the clinic, the physician delivers the unfortunate news that Analyn has kidney failure and will need a transplant. Because they aren't upper-income residents, they won't be on the priority list, so the doctor suggests the mother donate one of her organs. Before she leaves, the physician hands the patient medication for the dizziness and nausea. In the waiting area, Analyn watches a commercial promising those who take the deal 20 years of food, water, and shelter. After the person's time is up, they'll simply drift off to sleep knowing that when resources were scarce, they didn't take more than their fair share. At the front desk, they learn that the next available slot for surgery is in 6 months. Tala tries to explain that they don't have time because her processing is in 4 days. When the employee emphasizes that they can't move around the schedule to accommodate their case, the furious mother causes a scene, so the daughter says they need to leave before the guards detain them. As they're leaving, Analyn says she'll take the deal, but Tala objects and promises she'll find another solution. At the Bureau of Life office, the woman sees a family crying as guards take their father away for processing. Moments later, Tala asks an employee for a deal extension, just long enough until her daughter's surgery. The woman suggests Analyn take the deal, but the mother says doing so doesn't guarantee she'll receive an organ. Desperate, Tala asks that they make an exception and even offers a bribe, but the employee coldly says she's the only person to blame in the situation because she chose to have a child. As the woman walks away, a male employee who overheard the conversation approaches and says he can help her. In the makeshift operating room inside the man's apartment, Analyn asks if he can remove timers. He says he can't because the device detonates once it's tampered with. Curious, the daughter asks what happens when a timer goes off, and the man explains that it heats the person's blood, essentially burning them from the inside out. When the phone rings outside, the man leaves the room to answer it. Meanwhile, Analyn sees a cooler beside one of the operating tables and wonders why it's there. Tala theorizes the man might need it to temporarily store the kidney after removing it from her body and before the transplant. However, the daughter finds more empty coolers inside a cabinet labeled for different organs from two women of their exact age. They realize he never wanted to help them, but that he's planning to harvest their organs. Analyn opens the balcony doors and looks for an escape route. Moments later, the man returns, sees the open balcony doors, and deduces the women escaped. When he leaves to find them, the mother and daughter emerge from the cabinet. Relieved, they outsmarted the devious man. Later, Analyn disagrees with Tala's suggestion to find another doctor and says they should locate her father since he's also a potential donor. The mother counters that they don't know where he is, so they head to Jin's apartment to see if he can help them access the Bureau's database. Inside, Tala sees bottles of mysterious liquids, prompting the man to explain that he studied chemistry and he's simply using it to make money however he can. Then, Analyn asks if he knows a way to hack into the Bureau's records, but Jin says it's impossible because it requires a face scan. However, he knows a Bureau official with a remote terminal that allows outsiders access to the database for a price. That afternoon, the mother pawns off her jewelry to raise money to pay off the official. They realize that the official's home is inside the enclave, so Tala steals a laundry van so they can enter the exclusive sector. After successfully passing through the gates, Analyn sees the extravagant homes inside the enclave and she can't believe most people need to die for 20 years of food rations while the upper-income residents live in luxury. Eventually, they reach the official's home and realize it's his wife who runs the illegal operation without his knowledge. Through the database, they find out that not only is Analyn's father still alive, but that he lives in their district. Later, they head to the man's apartment and the daughter finally meets her father, Michael, for the first time. During the awkward conversation, the man says he's an engineer now. Then, Tala explains their daughter's situation and how they need him to donate one of his kidneys. However, Michael reveals that he won't be around in 6 months either, because his processing is in 4 months, surprising the mother who didn't know he took the deal. The disappointed Tala recounts how he was against taking the deal 20 years ago, so he says it was the only way to ensure a comfortable life. Then, Michael reminds the woman that she too thought they could survive without signing the contract, but she went behind his back and took the deal anyway, which he reveals is the reason why he left. Analyn realizes Tala made the decision 2 decades ago because she was pregnant, and the upset mother goes to the bathroom to escape the tense situation. In the bathroom, the woman wonders why all the cabinets are empty, and then she finds a bag in the shower. After they leave, Tala tells Analyn that she thinks Michael's leaving the city. The daughter believes he is going to the railroad and convinces her mother to follow the man, so they head back to the apartment to pack their bags for the journey. Analyn stops by Jin's place, but when Kabira answers the door, she wonders why the woman's all alone in the apartment. When the woman asks why she has a backpack, Analyn lies and says it contains things Jin might be able to sell. Moments later, Kabira looks out the window and sees the mother and daughter seemingly in a hurry to get somewhere. That evening, they follow Michael from his apartment to the market where he receives a garment from a vendor. Eventually, he camps out in an abandoned building, so the mother and daughter choose a location a floor above to keep an eye on him. Even though she was supposed to keep watch, Tala fell asleep, and when she wakes up, sees that Michael's no longer there. However, the man's standing behind them and says they need to stop following him because it's unsafe. So the mother threatens to call the police if he doesn't tell them where he's going. Eventually, Michael reveals that he's headed to a place that's out of the Bureau's reach. He says one of the commune's engineers died, so they recruited him. When Analyn and Tala insist on coming, he says they'll only let him in. but the mother's willing to risk it, especially after she learns that their doctors know how to remove timers. Suddenly, scavengers arrive, so Michael helps the pair evade the dangerous man by distracting them. Later, the daughter throws up and she realizes she left her medication inside a bag while they were escaping. As the man looks at his ailing daughter, he sadly reiterates that even though he can promise to get them there, he can't assure them that they'll get in. In an industrial complex by the wall, Michael says blending in with the workers is the only way to the tunnel that leads outside the city. Then, he wears the coveralls the vendor gave him and promises to come back for the pair. Minutes later, he returns with coveralls and helmets for them to wear. Meanwhile, Kabira spies on the trio as they blend in with a group of uniformed workers. Inside a building, the contact signals Michael toward a secluded area. The man says he just can't change the plan and include 2 other people, so Analyn explains that they're a family. While making their way to the tunnel entrance, a police officer intercepts them and asks to see their papers. The daughter, who managed to hide, subdues the officer with a pipe to the head. Before the other guards arrive, the contact points them toward a hatch that leads to the tunnel and tells Michael to wait for the boat that'll pick them up tomorrow morning. In the tunnel, Tala apologizes for not telling the man that she took the deal 20 years ago. Then, he commends her for doing a great job raising their daughter. The woman asks if he's ever thought about what their life would have been like had they stayed together, and Michael says that every day for the last 2 decades, he's regretted leaving them. Eventually, Analyn finds the exit and they work together to open the metal grate. Now that they're on the other side of the wall, the trio camp out by the riverside. While Tala collects firewood, the daughter asks her father why he gave up and took the deal months after her mother did. So Michael admits he realized life meant nothing without Tala and Analyn, which is why he signed his life away. That night, the woman teases the man about his cooking skills, and the daughter watches as her parents awkwardly flirt with each other. The next day, the boat arrives, but the contact refuses to take all 3 of them. Michael threatens to end his life if he doesn't, but the man reminds him that they don't know the way to the commune. To the mother and daughter's surprise, Michael boards the boat and leaves them behind. They try to swim toward the vessel, but all the man does is ashamedly avert his gaze. When they swim back to shore, Tala says they have no other choice but to head back home. The daughter asks how they'll sneak back into the city, so the mother explains the security measures were designed to keep people from leaving, not entering. On the day of her processing, Tala calculates the money they have left. Because it's not enough for food and doctors, she sadly concludes that Analyn might have to take the deal. When it's time for her to leave, she asks the daughter to stay home because she doesn't want her around when she dies. Distraught, Analyn heads to Jin's apartment and tells him they tried everything but there's nothing they could do to save her mother's life. Suddenly, Kabira appears and says she has an idea that could work, but Jin thinks it's still too early to implement it. Despite his warnings, the defiant daughter says she'll do whatever it is as long as there's a chance it'll save her mother. Meanwhile, Tala enters a sterile room where a worker tells her to change into a hospital gown. Seconds later, a recorded message reverberates in the room, thanking the woman for her noble sacrifice to ensure the planet's limited resources sustain the continuation of mankind. Concurrently, Analyn runs to the Bureau of Life office, urgently asking that they accommodate her request. In the room, a man walks in with a device, attaches the nodes on Tala's body, and says she'll feel a small shock. The woman braces for her inevitable death, but to her surprise, the man says she can go because he's done resetting her timer. Confused, Tala asks why she received another 20 years, so he explains that someone traded their life for hers. When she learns that Analyn signed away her life to save hers, she runs out of the room and screams out her daughter's name. Meanwhile, in another room, Analyn ingests the blue liquid the worker hands her and says she's ready to die. Eventually, Tala finds her daughter's lifeless body and she cries helplessly until the guards appear. One man knocks her out to subdue her, and while she's unconscious, 2 workers arrive and say they'll take care of her. In the morgue, the mother wakes up and walks toward her daughter's body. Suddenly, Jin and Kabira barge into the room, and the man injects a blue substance into Analyn's neck. Surprisingly, the woman seemingly comes back to life, much to the mother's surprise. Kabira explains that she works for the railroad and they've been planning on recruiting Analyn. However, the stubborn daughter wouldn't agree unless they saved Tala as well, so Jin used his chemistry know-how to create a potion that made the woman appear dead, hence approving the 20-year transfer to the mother and then resuscitating her in the morgue. Kabira says she didn't think the railroad officials would approve of taking both the women, but she says Michael convinced them. Minutes later, Jin and Kabira transport the women on gurneys and into a van. The woman says it's a legal bureau vehicle and they prepared the necessary papers to ensure a smooth journey to the commune. Now that their ordeal's finally over, Tala takes Analyn in her arms and breathes a sigh of relief.
Subscribe to watch more videos like this, turn on notifications and leave a like to help the channel out. Thank you for watching.